That was a bit too loud. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I can hear you great.
Oh, I forgot to turn the camera. There we go.
Hey, how are you?
Good, good. How's the how's progress on my stories?
Good.
Hmm.
No, it's great. Here, let me pull it up. So what I did was I just went through, spent all my time on Graveyard, which is great. I think what I'm going to do is just kind of go through it. If you're cool, just walk through it as we usually do. Not much to say at all on the first page. Again, would just
Oh
try to
wow, I
avoid
see a
three
lot of red
remembered. Is
text
that
down
close?
there. A lot of red
Coming up,
text.
but it's more of a suggestion. So we'll get up there. But the three remembered, my suggestion would be, oh my God, you remembered. Of course I remembered. And I think that says everything. How could you think I wouldn't have remembered our 1 year anniversary? Sounds a bit scoldy anyway, at a point where you probably want to be putting the audience's mind at ease, the reader's mind at ease.
Mhm.
Plus it's one more remembered you can cut. So two remembered I'm okay with. Three is then I'd be looking for different words if you wanted to use
Mhm.
if you want to use the concept. Um, I love
Yeah,
what you did here.
I
I think
could.
it was great.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not going to do a show. Not. Yeah, I thought about doing show don't tell, but you know what? Sometimes you just need to tell people shit because, dear God, it's
Oh
just.
no, and with this story, I think there's definitely value in doing that.
Hmm.
So let me make some suggestions based on it because you gave me all the good stuff to work with. So they met in a doctor's visit. There's a couple of things I immediately love about this, and you'll see what I think you've created massive
Give me a sec. I want
opportunities
to
for
get.
yourself.
Give me a sec. I want to get a drink for
Yeah,
this.
go for it.
I didn't realize how close I was getting to. Okay, so continue.
No, that's great. Okay, let me pull that back out. There we go. So what I'm going to make a couple of recommendations here to just take,
Hmm.
I think what was a really solid thing that you've introduced and go even further. So of course I remember, now you start off with that had been a special day. Of course, we don't know what that day necessarily is referring to. It's obvious by implication. You're talking about the day they met. So I would just say that the day they met was hard to forget.
Hmm.
Um,
A little more specific.
she'd been in the hospital, and I think yeah, and then she'd been in the hospital. Period. One assumes that she's in the hospital for some kind of a reason. And I'm going to suggest it's less important that we know that she's there to see if the doctors could discover why she's sick because that comes out pretty clearly. Ever since, so my suggestion is something along this line. First of all, the note that I'm going to start with is the note up here. So let me make that a little bigger so we can both see it. So if you're going to recall the day they met, the first thing I'm going to want to see is them meeting, which we don't see a lot of in this scene. So she's there, and the only indication whatsoever that there's any connection in this moment between her and Matthias is literally the words she had met Matthias while he was visiting a blood bank, which is cool. But I'm going to suggest that I love the blood bank thing because obviously vampire. But I'm going to suggest a different reason why he's there, but it's still in the same neighborhood of where you're going for. First thing I would be thinking about doing is tie her medical condition to why she loves Matthias, because the whole reason you're bringing this up, in my mind as the reader, the whole reason you're bringing this up is you're going to say, if a reason we're going back to show in their meeting is not simply to show the meeting, but to show why this meeting led her to believe that he was a good guy to be with. In other words, tie her visit to the doctor and even potentially better, tie her medical condition to why she loves Matthias and would logically turn a blind eye to anything he ever did that was weird. And it's all embedded in these other things. So for example, don't quote me on this. This isn't the way I'm suggesting you write it. So I've taken what you've said and I simply thought, if Hayden's open to it, I'm going to give you an alternate potential paragraph. As a young girl, she'd always had trouble eating without emptying her guts 10 minutes later. 5 doctors hadn't been able to identify the cause and told her she would have to live with it. The other girls at school laughed at her, calling her bulimia girl, even though, unlike her, most of them actually were bulimic. And she was always tired, unable to concentrate on her assignments, often falling asleep in class. Between students calling her names and teachers giving her shit, she'd always felt like a freak, an outsider, disconnected from everyone around her. But then she had met Matthias, sitting in the waiting room. Looking back now, she couldn't recall why he'd been there. But he'd smiled warmly, a real smile, eyes and all, as he listened to her share her story, shyly at first before spilling the beans. It was as if she was all that mattered to him. That's when she knew he was the one. So whether you use those words or not, my point, the things that I'm putting in there, you can probably deduce it on your own. Is here is a girl who is completely shut out from every other person. She's sick and the doctors don't know why. She's got multiple problems, and everybody castigates her for it, except for this one guy who seemed to really care, who seemed to really listen. And it was, you could even put in things like, I don't even, she didn't even know why she told him everything, but there was just something about him that made her comfortable. So in other words, not simply going back to that first day, but going back to that first day and showing us why she believed there was something special and unique about it. She's desperate. Basically what you're saying in no uncertain terms is this girl is lonely and desperate and feels misunderstood. Mm-hmm. And he understood her. The end. So take anything if you want, take anything that you want from that. But basically I'm taking your 2 paragraphs and just injecting a little more detail, a little more emotion. And then this line, what I would do with this line from the first day we met, I knew you were special. I might pick different words than met and special since you said it previously, do whatever you want there. But there was no one else like you in the whole world. That's when I knew I had to make you mine. I might have that, not required, but I might say that, of course I remembered. And it had to immediately follow that with, of course I remembered. From the day we met, I knew you were special. There was no one else like you in the world. That's when I knew I had to make you mine. And then the day they met was hard to forget and go on from there. Then when you come out of that, mm-hmm. Then you can go straight to pulling out a blanket. Matthias laid out just under a tree, blah, blah, blah. Oh, babe, you're so sweet. Noticing here, really honest. This looks really great. Could you grab the food? And then my suggestion was before, and you could take or leave this one too, before he suggests she goes to the basket, what I would want to do is I would want to re-emphasize where they are, because he still hasn't really addressed, he sort of did back there when she said, this is kind of creepy. Why are we here? He said, I thought it would be romantic out under the stars for our 1-year anniversary. That's totally fine. You don't need to add anything more to that if you don't want to. But the reason I'm suggesting you drop it, a different version of the same thing in here just before we go to the picnic basket, is it enables you to throw in something that makes him sound even creepier without it necessarily setting off any alarm bells. Mm-hmm. There's just something about this place that makes me think of new beginnings. I don't know. I just feel at home here, and I wanted to share that with you. And that sounds fine until you realize that sounds actually doesn't sound fine. It's borderline what? And then he goes for the basket. And we're like, oh shit. And now it's on. So take any of that or not that you want. But I like the idea that he would re-emphasize why they're here. Mm-hmm. Instead of food, rolls of duct tape, sat rather than set, present tense, sat nestled inside the picnic basket. Matthias, what is this? She turned around, but Matthias, now here's the only thing that I might suggest. It's fine the way it is, for sure. But my suggestion is you've done a total 2 thumbs up for taking the note I gave you last week about put us more in her head, put us more in emotions. You've already done that by giving the flashback. I think it's ingenious, and it's keeping the emotional center with her. Mm-hmm. So that was brilliant to include that. My suggestion is you do that again here. Rather than she turned around, but Matthias grabbed her head, covering her mouth with the cloth. Nothing wrong with that. She turned around in time to see his hand holding a cloth suddenly smashed into her face, cracking her nose. She could taste her own hot blood cascade down into her mouth. She started. That's not well written. But the point is it's keeping in her head. It's not immediately moving over to the action. And suddenly he did this, and then this happened. Mm-hmm. Nothing wrong with it. But you might want to double down on that. She's still in this moment. She's still sort of in this glow of the memory. And the only thing that breaks that is like, Matthias, what is this? And then boom, he grabs her. Take or leave any of those suggestions. This is great. I love all the things that he says. I'm going to suggest, again, not required, I would suggest don't bite into her shoulder yet. Let this be a little bit like Pennywise and Georgie. The fun of the opening scene in It is that he just teases and tantalizes. We know what's coming. Anybody who's read the book knows that clown is eating that kid's arm, right?
Anyone the fact that he looks at it knows what's going to happen.
Oh, but the fact that it drags that scene out, and you're like, oh, this is killing me, waiting for the moment. He says, why didn't you just reach in here, Georgie? And he reaches in, and then out come the teeth. My suggestion was, let the teeth be your punchline rather than punctuating this. So my suggestion would be, Matthias, what are you doing? Stop, get off of me. She screamed as she tried to twist away, but he held her firm. She fell, and then, of course, the ice shooting through her veins will come later, too. I can't let you go. The thought of growing old, now, I love what you've done here. I'm going to make a minor suggestion. You can take or leave it. Because the thought of you growing old and dying pains me. I won't let even the march of time come in between us. Another suggestion, pick and choose if you want. from our first day together, I knew your life would be difficult. So now what are you doing? You're calling back again to that day they met. The reason now the audience is going to go, oh shit, the reason the guy goes to hospitals is he's trolling for people who are dying, or he's trolling for whoever. He didn't pick her because she's dying. He picked her because she was dying and had nothing to lose. He knew that. Mm-hmm. So in other words, she was a sitting duck and vulnerable. From our first day together, I knew your life would be difficult and filled with pain. And it broke my heart. I decided then that I would save you from the anguish of age and decay, that I would release you from your misery. So in other words, in his mind, whether he's just conning her or not, there is this horrifically beautiful justification. You're dying anyway, or you're sick. And I thought, I'm going to give you a gift, the gift of immortality. It does mean sucking your blood and turning into a vampire, but what are you going to do? That's what we do. We're vampires, right? And then my suggestion would be, he grabbed, I will transform you into my mortal queen of the night, and you shall be queen. Bite would be a suggestion. Take or leave it. And even when he's doing that, now here we go back to this sort of the note I gave last week. Now here, there's a couple or three strategic points where I would strongly invite you to get back into her head. For example, as this guy's saying all of this, you did such a great, now it's going to be even more noticeable now because you did such a good job previously of getting in her head, that it's even more noticeable now that we don't go into her head at precisely the moment when we think we should. So if I'm her and I'm hearing the guy that I love, the one, say all of these things to me, I definitely want to get inside her head. I want to feel her fear. I want to feel her confusion, her disorientation. This is the guy, the one guy she thought she could trust, is trying to kill her. Oh, and by the way, he's also a fucking vampire. So, oh my God, I need to get inside her head for that moment. Not just read a description of her struggling. Mm-hmm. Your physical is excellent. The mental and emotional, I'm going to invite you to sneak a little more in there. What is she thinking? What is she feeling? And so this, you are so delicious. I love this line. Juice this up if you want to. And even though we've heard sort of echoes of this in other vampire shows, I think there's a way to avoid sounding like you're stripping them off, but I can hear the blood moving through your veins. I can smell the life flowing through you, and I find it delicious. So in other words, rather than you're so delicious, I would, he's been such a serial killer romantic up and now until now. Let him continue to be. You are the most beautiful thing I've ever, just a little grammatical thing on the word "your." But I would also say that you could also go, don't fight it, darling. I promise your suffering will soon be over, or something along that line. Like, play out to its logical conclusion. Look, just trust me. I'm doing you a favor here, bitch. Is sort of but he's saying that nicely. And then chomp. And I love that you went for that's the spirit. My suggestion, and I definitely want in her head, oh my God, this woman in the space of seconds is having her whole life changed. And all I'm thinking is, how dare you not tell me what she's thinking and feeling? So all you have to do is get in there. That blood splashed over her as Matthias recoiled in pain. I love that. I'm going to invite you to give me a little more detail. Really describe it. And you may want to use spray instead of splash. That's up to you, because splash is great too. He bites her, and describe it she already looks like a feral animal because she's now got blood all over her face. He took a bite, and I love that you put the direction of the blood in the right place. It's spraying at her. I wouldn't be afraid to if he's like a mosquito, in the sense that he's full of his own blood. Well, he's full of blood. Yeah, let's get some gushing happening. You're alluding to it. I'd go further. That's the spirit. He roared. So my suggestion here, again, take or leave it. That's the spirit, he roared as he stumbled backwards, smiling maniacally, or however you want to word that. New sentence. Something like, she stared at him in horror, and what I'm trying to do is get into her head a bit. His lower lip had split in two, but now it was strangely healing itself before her eyes, or something like that. The damage done probably spilled a bunch of blood, but he's also regenerating, and that's, whether it would happen this quick or not doesn't matter. My suggestion would be, this is the confirmation. Because he might just be a guy with sharp teeth biting her, but if he bites her, even the cold in her veins doesn't necessarily assume anything, because who knows what it's like to get bitten. Maybe that's how people feel. But if he heals super quickly, holy fuck, I'm in the presence of a legit supernatural being. Lower lip, I just love all of that. Okay, now I definitely want to get into her head here, because again, oh my god, her brain must be short circuiting at this point. Like her whole world is being turned upside down while her boyfriend is trying to eat her, and so I got to get in her head of it.
Yeah.
This
How
is where a movie.
exactly
This is
do I
where,
do that though? Can't exactly write her
well,
brain short circuits because that's not very
he,
satisfying.
here's what I would do. I would. Do you have a voice recorder or some kind of thing on your phone?
Yeah.
So this may feel weird, but this is the kind of thing that writers do all the time, and I would invite you to do this a lot now and in the future.
Mhm.
Turn all the lights off, turn off your phone, take 10 minutes to get in the zone, whatever you have to do, and then I want you to try to imagine being in love, trusting somebody implicitly. If it helps, this is tough. I admit this is tough. It's easy for me because I'm in a relationship and blah blah blah, but it's still not. It still takes work. Try to imagine the person you care most about, the person you trust the most, suddenly out of nowhere, turning on you and trying to kill you, whatever the method. And it may take a while to get into the zone, but I want you to try to imagine how you're feeling and don't write it. Talk it out, talk into your voice quarter. You're going to tap into some emotions that maybe you've never tapped into before, but I want you to get as close. I invite you to get as close to abject fear and paranoia and terror and betrayal and anger and hurt. It's going to be a flood of all kinds of different things. But and what you record into this thing, don't worry about being eloquent. It'll probably be a hot mess, jambalaya soup of the. But then I would invite you to do that for as long as you think it's necessary. Because what I'm really inviting you to do is do two things at once, which is the challenge of writing, is what would the feeling be if I was this character? And then how do I put that into words? Mm-hmm. And I don't have a quick answer for you. I mean, I could try to write it for you, but all I'd be doing is the same thing. Right. And just the feeling of lostness, and how is she feeling? To me, the cold running through her veins is one thing. Is she losing consciousness as the blood is draining from her body? Is she seeing things? Is she seeing, white sparkles? Is she seeing her whole life flash before her eyes? I mean, what goes through the mind of somebody as they're dying? I don't know. I've never come that close to death.
Strictly speaking, she's not dying. Her entire body is technically being kickstarted in this moment.
Totally. Well, and there's a good point. So she's really going through a couple of things.
It's like getting off of drugs, except the drugs are from psychiatric hospital. Like breaking out of the psychiatric hospital with your boyfriend. The boyfriend then tries to eat you, and you're coming down off of drugs.
Yeah. Well, to me, there's no less than 4 things happening to her body, totally apart from how she's feeling. So here's the work. Oh my God. But if you can nail this, and I have confidence you can, here's the 4 things that are happening that I can see, totally apart from the emotion she's feeling. Whether or not she's dying, she would naturally think she's dying. And at least for a while, that would be the most logical thing to go through the head of anybody in a situation like this. It's sort of like when you touch something that's really cold, and somebody tells you it's hot. Well, you go and touch it, and the first thing you feel is red hot heat until you realize that no, you're not. You're It's like the scene from the original Punisher film where a guy tortures a guy hanging upside down tells him it's a red hot poker, but it's just a popsicle. Mm-hmm. And the guy genuinely feels heat because he's tricked his brain into believing he's feeling heat. So her first thing that goes through her head of 4 things is she thinks she's dying. But then the feeling that she has suddenly doesn't feel like dying. In fact, number 2, she's actually feeling something that she doesn't know how to define. The third thing is the thing you're already describing, which is that ice cold feeling in her veins. That's an easy one. But the other 2 are she's feeling a sensation she can't quite describe. All she knows is that suddenly she doesn't feel sick anymore. So this is a girl who has all kinds of problems physically. And so how confusing would that be? How confusing would it be to simultaneously be experiencing the greatest fear you've ever felt in your life while your body is going through things you've never experienced before, and you have no idea what's happening? So that would be terror. That would be a whole other category, a whole other column of terror on top of the terror of being eaten. And I love the idea that he is.
I feel like you're gonna have to write all that down because I'm gonna remember all those different.
Here, let me write it down. Yeah. For what is this poor girl thinking and feeling right now? Besides fear, well, fear is too small. Besides terror, anger, betrayal, um, and the assumption of near death,
Mm-hmm.
her body is experiencing three, and now I said four before, but assumption of near death was one of them. Her body is experiencing three radical new sensations she has never felt before. Let me just fix that up. The feeling of dying, and then the feeling of not dying,
Mm-hmm.
which she can't identify, of course, because what is that? And then the feeling of I'm gonna go and give it the feeling of dying. So what is that? That's like pain, then
I'd say that the feeling of dying is more
numbness,
more numbness, less pain.
um, slipping into oblivion. She thinks, because of course that would feel like that temporarily, and then the feeling of I'm going to say it differently, and then the feeling of revival. The feeling of some inexplicable, unexplainable, in other words, some inexplicable
Of waking up.
revival. Yeah, well put. And then the feeling of her sickness, illness, whatever it is she's got, dissipating.
Mm-hmm.
And then the feeling of a new energy and power she's never felt before. And that's all while she is experiencing. So this girl is getting a serious initiation into the sensations of a vampire. She's experiencing all of that
Well, she's not becoming a
simultaneously.
vampire. Remember, the vampire disease is being
Right.
burned out so that the rest of her body can function.
Gotcha. That's perfect. So whatever that is, and then the great thing is if as you figure out how to somehow get all of that, and to me, I wouldn't overthink it either. You could just describe one thing for each of those. What does the terror of being killed feel like? You could sum up terror, anger, betrayal, and assumption of near death in one sentence. Is she stared into the eyes of the one man who ever loved her as he tried to kill her, and the feelings of shock and betrayal and terror that ran through her. Shorts, short circuiting brain is not the best way to say that, but it's some version of that. She felt her life slowly slipping away from her. There was no question in her mind that her death was seconds away. And then suddenly an alertness, that was beyond description. And her suddenly her sickness or whatever, she suddenly for the first time in years, she was hungrier than she'd been in years. Especially if you're talking about somebody who has a tendency to be hungry and then throw up, give me the opposite of that. She's suddenly hungrier than she's ever felt. And suddenly, I would consider giving her some kind of physical, she could be a hemophiliac. That's cool for a vampire. If there's some kind of, I mean, for the vampire to see is what I mean. And so in other words, if she's got some kind of mark, it could be anything. Marks, scars, bruises, whatever else like that. If she looks down at her, I would give her something to look down and physically see, just like his lip healing is like, whoa, can't pretend that's something else. If she's looking down at a body that's covered in bruises or whatever, and suddenly they all disappear or that kind of a thing, but she's also feeling this new energy and power. Suddenly she felt like she could do anything, but she's feeling that. So it's the most conflicted feeling in the world. She's simultaneously feeling helpless and powerless as she's suddenly feeling more powerful than she's ever felt before.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a lot to think about, but that would be, if that's helpful, those would be some of the things I'd be tapping into, because really that's what I care about. While I'm interested in a description of her being attacked, I'm way more interested in the best vampire attack stories, whether it's Stoker's Dracula or The Interview with the Vampire. Those are great books because they describe very well the feeling, the sensation of being bitten. And to me, you could easily just go online and look up what is it like to be bitten by a vampire. There's got to be something on Google, that looks at other different things. Mm. So that's sort of what I would lead into. Moving on. Let's see here. My suggestion would be here, not that you need to get her. Matthias roared like an animal as she ran away, because we're literally about to see monsters and animals. I might get that, get her. Matthias roared. I think that's great, good enough. I would probably, I would rather suggest that the monsters don't slink out of the darkness; they burst out of the darkness, because he says, "Get her!" And it was sort of like, so it was like a gun going off in a race and say, "Ready, set, go!" And these guys like run a half a mile an hour, and I'm like, "No, I want to see them run." Pack of Hungry Dogs works, except you've got it twice, so I might change that. So like a pack of hungry dogs, like a group of dogs. I wouldn't have that twice. Barely is actually spelled, that's barley, as in harvest. So barely is Barely. Barely larger than children, they were emaciated, hairless creatures. Just check your spelling on creatures. You're going to do that later. With yellowed claws and black teeth. I love it. Mm-hmm. And then you say the monster singular, so I didn't know what that was referring to. So you say one of them rushed at her, like.
Okay, yeah. I'll make sure all the terms are the same again.
Mm-hmm. And because you use, I might give a little more description. It's up to you if you want to, but I felt like I didn't. Barely larger than children, they were emaciated, hairless creatures with yellow claws and black teeth. That tells me what size they are, but I'm still looking for. But what can I compare them to? Do they resemble anything that we see? If they don't,
yes,
I might go into a little.
Children.
Okay, so I would say that, because all you're saying there is that they're barely larger than children, which simply speaks to size. So I would say they
point out
they look like
they're basically small naked human children that are hairless with mouths full of darkness and yellowed claws.
You could say resembling human children, and not much bigger than one. So you can cover two, but whatever. Because then the monsters rushed at her. All I'm getting right there is monsters, ghoul, creature, and I was looking for just a little more description of what exactly. It's hard to picture what I'm looking at. You're already halfway there as soon as you say they look like human children. That's terrifying. That, by the way, is fucking terrifying, Hayden. If I had a bunch of creatures running at me that looked like little kids, that's the scariest thing imaginable.
Hairless little kids that have been living in the sewers for weeks.
Especially if they're giggling as they run towards her, like dinner time or whatever the deal is.
Nope, they're purely feral. They're just straight up feral.
Love it. So good. Here where she closes her eyes, I love this, as she flailed her arms in what she thought was a vain effort to stave off the monsters. Crunch. Ramona opened her eyes to see the ghoul was wrapped around her knees. I think I would describe her do more than flail, because all I pictured her was her going, "Ah!" And suddenly there was a monster wrapped around a tombstone. I would love to say that she actually connected with one of them, and it was afraid she had broken her hand, because again, her mind doesn't matter what new power she has. Her brain is still the old her. So if I had superhuman strength and I punched somebody really hard, my first thought, it was a purely reflexive thought, would be, oh shit, especially if I felt something, oh my God, did I just break my hand? And then you look down and you realize that your hand just went through the chest cavity of this creature. You're like, what? I didn't feel that. So I would go for maybe an indication of connection.
I'm still wrapping it
around this thing
wrapped?
Yeah, that's totally good. And so what I pictured was just the physics of this, is that if she hit this thing so hard that it wrapped around the thing, it's either a gooey mess, which would be the only way it could stick to the gravestone, or it's wrapped around at the base of the tombstone. It wasn't 100% clear, because physically I don't think you hit anything and it hits a tombstone. No matter how hard you hit it, it's not going to wrap around and stay there unless it's made of.
She hit it. It slammed into its spine like this and bent backwards around it.
That totally makes sense. But to me, it's the adhesion is the only thing. So I'm being technical, but to me, if I hit something, even if it broke it completely in half, it break it in half and it would fall over. But one thing you could do is that it broke it in half and also knocked off the top of the top of the tombstone, and so it's hanging off the corner. There's so many ways you can play it. I'm just being technical there, but I'd go for an impact on when she hits the monster. Consider just a clarification of wrapped around a tombstone. Love
Okay.
that, by the way. She was suddenly even more confused as she stumbled along. In all the excitement, she had missed the fact that the icy feeling of Matthias's bite, that all sounds awkward now. I don't think you need to say any of that. My suggestion would be Ramona opened her eyes, see the ghoul wrapped around, a nearby tombstone. And I would probably cut it, if it was me, I would cut it there and go, she looked down at her hands and thought to herself, did I do that? And like literally go into the thought at that point. But I love what you do here. It was then that she realized, like, did I do that? It was then that she realized Matthias's bite. Let me just say it differently. It was then that she realized that Matthias's bite, had taken away the aches and pains she felt from her illness. However you word that, there's a better way to word it. In fact, she felt better than she had in years. Like, I would lean into the idea that it doesn't take away from her terror, but you're re-emphasizing the fact that, oh my God, like, what is happening here? So like, and I love what that's doing to my emotions. I'm like, oh, this is the worst, best thing that's ever happened to this girl. Is what the way it's feeling. And it's all because you added that hospital scene. That was magic. Just by showing her being sick in the hospital and him having preyed on her for that reason and leading to this moment. It all, like, now this girl, I am totally intrigued
together more.
Girl. Oh, it's beautiful. It just works. And now all I want to do, because you only set me up to page 4. What I want to do now is I am dying to see what she does next and how this plays out.
I didn't change anything in the next chapter, so I did change some stuff, but only Watkins' stuff.
Oh, so this is the end. So this is the end of the chapter. For some reason, I thought more happened after that in this chapter.
Nope.
Okay.
That's it. She goes. She meets Julius.
Even better than, yeah.
He gives her his coat, and then Watkins runs out and gets killed by the monster.
So now I'm really excited about the idea that you would at least consider that ending on this note. So if the last thing that is said in here is, in fact, she felt better than she had in years, that is a classic Stephen King level ending to basically say, so you're ending on this bizarre positive note. I love the idea that this woman has just been through the most terrifying thing imaginable, and it ends by saying, she ran for her life, or however she hadn't felt this good in years. It's a great way to end when we know her life has been irrevocably changed. Mm-hmm. So magic, man. The hospital did it, and now it's just a matter of potentially embellishing and just giving us a little bit more meat.
Okay. Quick question: did you check out chapter 3 yet, or have we not gone around to that?
I have not, because I ended up using the full half hour on this one.
That's fair.
But that will be the next thing that I look at now.
I do have a question going forward, because I've had 2 thoughts. The first option is to go with what we've already planned so far, have Julius walk in, kill the vampire, and then have that entire thing happen. The other option that I considered, and I really like that idea, is that instead of going straight to Alaska, we instead have this whole Julius stays with Ramona, Watkins dies, and we have a Julius Ramona quick investigation, because she's like the main witness to T.S.'s main source of information, so she helps him solve this issue while they're running tests on whatever the fuck happened to her. And after, we do Matthias's little story and have him killed, then we go to Alaska, and they decide to hire her on full time.
Sure. Yeah, play with that. I like that.
Mostly because that way I can get 2 stories out at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
My main issue of doing that is that it kind of pulls back from the prologue. It means it's going to be a longer delay until that pays out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think you can, so long as if you feel you need to, you're referencing what happened in the prologue in conversation between people. Like, you can postpone something a long time if you judiciously, insert into conversation, well, we haven't heard back from that, that whatever you have them say.
Strictly speaking, it'd probably be better if the entire thing was set up around Ramona's, capture by eldritch creatures or some shit.
Mm-hmm.
That way I can introduce the main villain, Ramona, and Julius all at the same time. but I'm not really sure how to do that 100%.
Are you going to have, because I would assume that there's at least a strong probability that when they take her out of that graveyard, they'll be taking the body that was wrapped around the tombstone or some evidence. So I mean, are
They're
they
cleaning the
gathering
whole
any
thing
evidence?
out. They're cleaning it all
Okay,
out and making it look like nothing happened there.
love it. So it's Men in Blackish that way.
Yeah, pretty much.
Do they? Is there any discovery from this site? Are they? Have you thought about whether or not they pull anything from this site that helps speak to that whole storyline of this is different this time, or is the sheer thing, the fact that this happened, is that enough in your mind to have Julius go, "Wow, this was a little bit different. This is not their usual MO."
Yeah,
Or are you doing that?
well, a vampire with a bunch of ghouls in an urban city where there are tons of cops running around is odd enough. So I think I can probably play it with
Definitely. Yeah, no, you can. So long as my gut is, so long as there's something about this that isn't just a girl who was attacked and just had something happen to her that's changed her. Although those are both cool, especially the latter one. She just became the most interesting thing in the story.
that.
With what's just happened to her, all eyes on Ramona. Like I'm just dying to know what happens to her next. And I'm hoping, and I'll be disappointed if we don't see him. So I'm glad you're going to carry her forward, because I'd be like, oh, I hate it when shows. It's like killing Darth Maul off in Phantom Menace. It's sort of like, oh, come on, he would have been like a great villain for at least a couple of movies. Why are you killing him at the end of the first one? So I want to see more of her. Great work.
Yeah, that's kind of why I want to keep Matthias around a little, because it just felt like a waste to not do the vampire storyline then and there.
I agree. No, you've got some wicked stuff happening here. Love it.
Also, like, Game of Thrones did this with the White Walkers. They showed up for like the opening
Mm-hmm.
scene and weren't seen until like what, the seventh episode.
Yep. So long as it pays off. I mean, it would suck if we didn't see them ever again, because we like I introduced them, but they're so pivotal. Yeah, and it needs all that extra time to build the rest of the story. So I have all respect to that, especially for season, for the way it just absolutely perfectly laid it down, everything it needed to lay down.
Mm-hmm.
Cool work, man. Next week, I will be in New York, of course. So I have us picking up again on the 26th. We'll just be getting back that day. So I'm wondering, let me just think this through. Let's keep it for now. If you're still cool with it, September 26th at 5:30.
Mm-hmm.
Does that work for you? So
that works for me, but we can December.
Did I say December?
I think you said December.
If I did, I meant September. Apparently, I'm high. So we know September 26th. Okay. You were so calm about that. You're like, yeah, no problem, Paul. But December? No, we'll see on September 26th.
Okay, sure. So, was it already September? Jeez, for some reason I thought it was still August.
Yeah, no, we're there. God, we're going to be through it quicker than you know it.
Wow. That's slightly disturbing. Yeah, got classes tomorrow. That's happening.
Oh my God. Well, good luck with that.
Will do.
Notes attention. I'm just going to put this down here. See you on September 26th, and we'll do that again at 5:30. All right. We'll see you in, I guess, a couple of weeks.
See you in a couple of weeks, Paul. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.